The word fascism is thrown around a lot these days in America. I've heard people on both the right and left sides of the political spectrum use it quite a bit. So what I want to do in this video is take an unbiased look at what fascism is, the characteristics of fascism, and then let you decide for yourself who the American fascists may be. Let's start with something simple, the definition. Fascism, a political philosophy, movement, or regime that exalts nation and often race above the individual, and that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of opposition. There's a lot in that definition, so let's break it down a bit. The first part of the definition says that it's a political philosophy or regime that exalts nation and often race above the individual. I think that's the part that Democrats use to point a finger at Donald Trump. But I think they're confusing nationalism with fascism. A nationalist puts their country above all other countries, while a fascist puts their country above its people. I've tried hard, but I can't think of any examples where Trump put our nation above the individual. Now, what's awesome about America's founding documents is that they actually do the exact opposite of putting nation above the individual. They protect the individual from a potential fascist regime. That's what freedom of speech is about, and the right to bear arms, and the right to due process, and the right that protects us against unreasonable searches and seizures, and that each of us have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's all about the individual being protected from a fascistic style government. So you tell me, is there a major political party in America that speaks out against any of these constitutional protections? And if you're a Democrat, I know how tempting it is to bring up the overturning of Roe v. Wade, but I'll touch on that in a minute. The second part of the definition is about a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader. Well, our system of government was created to limit the possibility of having a dictator. For laws to be passed in America, the president and the majority of the 435 representatives in the House and the majority of the 100 people elected to the Senate have to agree for a law to be created. Now, that doesn't mean that some presidents don't try to do things without having the House and Senate vote on a bill. The most recent example of a president doing this would be the student loan bailout. But as I said, this is an unbiased look at fascism in America, so I'm not suggesting in the least that Joe Biden is some kind of a fascist. I'm just pointing out the fact that this is the latest example of a president who unilaterally did something that normally can only be done with the agreement of the majority of the House and Senate. Even the Speaker of the House, Democrat Nancy Pelosi, said that the president didn't have the power to forgive student debt.
People think that the President of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not. He can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have that power. That has to be an act of Congress.
The third part of the definition of fascism is about severe economic and social regimentation. That's the centralized government controlling the economic system and forcing people to live a certain way. What's great about our country is that we have a federalist system, a system that unites our 50 states so that each state can maintain its own integrity. So every state has a say in what the federal government does, but not only that, our Constitution limits what the federal government can do and leaves everything else that it does not specifically talk about up to the states. Here's the 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. And that brings us back to Roe v. Wade. Because the issue of abortion was not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, it's reserved to the states, as it should be. The federal government taking power that it's not been given under the Constitution is actually a step toward fascism. Let me ask you this. Can you give me examples of both political parties advocating for the centralizing of government power? Would cutting taxes and regulation be an example of that? Or would increasing taxes and regulation be an example of it? Now, when it comes to social regimentation, I think about my younger years when people used to say this: "It's a free country, isn't it?" That meant that you had the freedom to say things that people didn't like. And while we mostly still enjoy that freedom, there is a significant percentage of the population who think they can socially or financially cancel people if they don't like something they said. And I'll defer to you on this one. Which side of the political aisle do most of the cancel culture people reside on? And that brings us to the last part of the definition of fascism, the forcible suppression of the opposition. Can you think of any examples of one political party suppressing their opposition? The first thing that comes to my mind is the Hunter Biden laptop story. The story was suppressed by social media giant Facebook, whose founder, Mark Zuckerberg, spent more than $400 million trying to get Joe Biden elected. That's not fascism, unless you believe he was working with the government. And recently, Zuckerberg went on the Joe Rogan show and talked about suppressing the laptop story.
How do you guys handle things when they're a big news item that's controversial? Like there was a lot of attention on Twitter during the election because of the Hunter Biden laptop story, the New York Post.
Yeah, we had that too.
Yeah, so you guys censored that as well?
So we took a different path than Twitter. Basically the background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. The distribution on Facebook was decreased, but people were still allowed to share it. So you could still share it. You could still consume it.
So when you say the distribution is decreased,
it got shared.
How does that work?
It basically, the ranking in newsfeed was a little bit less. So fewer people saw it than would have otherwise. So it definitely...
By what percentage?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's meaningful.
So, is that fascism? The largest social media website in the world working with the FBI to censor a legitimate news story that likely affected the outcome of an election? I'll let you decide. The fact of the matter is that all fascistic regimes start with this one characteristic. They have to have control over their citizens. If you're willing to study history, in the 1930s, when fascism was popular, every fascistic regime was only able to see their goals achieved because they had so much centralized power over the people. Without centralized control, there can't be fascism. Now ask yourself, which party in the United States wants more control over their citizens, and which one wants less? There is one party who's talking about ending the filibuster, packing the Supreme Court, federalizing our medical and educational systems, banning fossil fuel energy, modifying the First and Second Amendments, and abolishing the Electoral College and federalizing our elections. Does that make this party fascistic? I don't know. But it certainly doesn't make the party who opposes doing those things fascistic. Look, to this point, I've been about as unbiased as I can be. But let me ask you this. If the Democrats want the federal government to have more control over our lives, while the Republicans, including Donald Trump, want them to have less control over our lives, and centralized government control over the people is necessary for fascism to thrive, which party would be closer to being fascistic? The popular talking point right now is to say MAGA fascists when talking about people who support Trump. But again, they support someone who cut federal regulations, which is the exact opposite of what a fascist would do. My conclusion is this. The word fascist is a lot like the word racist or homophobe. It's mostly used as an insult. It's not often accurate or something the person saying it actually believes. It's just a disparaging comment they use in the hopes of swaying people politically who aren't paying much attention. And if you actually took an honest look at where Joe Biden or Donald Trump stand on any given issue, you would have to believe that Democrats are closer to being fascists than Republicans are. So what's your conclusion? Make your case in the comment section below and tell me where you think I got it wrong. And together, just maybe, we can figure out the simple truth. Hey guys, thanks for watching. And if you all want to support this channel, check out the links in the description, and let's keep putting some common sense back into the great debate.